Good afternoon, everybody. I'm James Clark, the governmental chair for the Planning Council map. The sir will be joining us in about a half hour. Today is Thursday, June 22nd. This is the general meeting of the HIV Planning Council. We'd like to begin by first going around the room and introducing ourselves. We have a number of guests here, so can you just identify yourself and what agency you're affiliated with, or who you're representing here at the table. David?
David Klotz, New York City Department of Health and Hygiene, Planning Council staff.
Julie Lahane, Westchester County Department of Health.
Paul Carr, Consumer, Manhattan.
Freddy Molano, Community Primero, PSR Community.
Kimberly Smith, PSRA, Kennel Board.
Lisa Zulik, IOC, Public Outside Recorder.
Andy Strauss, Tri-County, Hudson Valley Community Services.
Becky Fenton, Department of Home Services.
Maria Diaz, co-chair, Tri-County Steering Committee. Joan Edwards, New York State Department of Health and Institute.
Bobby Reliance from Red Response.
Lisa Betts, Tri-County Consumer Committee.
Eunice Casey, Health and Hospitals.
Kennedy, Whitehawk Heights Medical Center, and Immigration Care Committee.
Tim Prosky, HIV Center for Clinical Behavioral Studies, Columbia University.
And Joshua Motto, Consumer Commons, and Casey Indians.
Hey, Donna, who's in the membership committee and also needs assessment.
Tony Chase, Consumer of Brooklyn, New York, and our Alliance.
Graham Herman, New York City Department of Health.
Saul Reyes, Consumer Queens. John Shepherdson, Consumer Representative, Queens.
Darrell Wong, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Planning Council staff.
Joe Corbisiero, Parliamentarian.
And those on the phone, can you announce yourselves?
Good afternoon, this is Bonnie Cockrell from Drug Solutions.
Good afternoon, this is Donald Powell at Stoners Incorporated.
Oxford, Rockland County Department of Health.
Derek Weeks, Brookdale Medical Center.
All right, thank you guys for joining us on the conference call. We'd like to see your faces here sometime soon. Donald, Ronnie, it would be good to have you here when you're available. For those of you who are in the audience, would you like to introduce yourselves? Do we have a mic?
Yes.
Bettina Carroll, Public Health Solutions.
Hi, Eduardo with Chris Marswick.
Melanie Lawrence, Planning Council.
Jim Risterdone, African Services Committee.
Samla Magona, African Services Committee.
Rosa Toribio, Public Health Solutions.
Nadine Alexander, DOH.
Sarah Kozlowski, New York City, DOH.
Jose Colón Ortizia, Planning Council staff.
Christine Allen, Public Health Solutions.
Adrian Guzman from the New York City Health Department.
Terrence Gardet,
I'd like to welcome Terrence here. Terrence is my counterpart. He's governmental co-chair for the HIV prevention group. And it's good to see him here. Okay, let's begin with a moment of silence. Maria, can you lead us in a moment of silence, please?
I'd like to remember those that have just passed not too long, and remember those that are with the fight and still fighting. And let's not forget everybody in between, because we're still fighting and we gotta keep up the good fight.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
We have two periods of public comments during our meetings, one at the beginning and one at the end. and oftentimes if there's questions from the public during the presentation, we will call on you. We may or may not call on you, but most likely I'm sitting here. I will call on you. But if there are any public comments during this time, this is your opportunity to speak. Okay? And see me. So first of all, Daryl, will you go through the meeting materials here, and then David will go through the minutes.
Certainly. So in your packets, after the minutes, we've got this month's grantee report, followed by our notification of award, or rather the objective review final summary statement. And then we'll be moving into our presentation for today from Applicant Services Committee. Along with that, there are a couple of documents that they've included for everyone's edification. The Form I-130, which is a petition for alien relative. And the next piece is entitled Table of Contents. It's actually a deferral notice. Is that deferred action? And if you look at it, it describes the applicant or the hypothetical patient and his or her medical condition. And finally, there's a warrant for arrest of alien issued by the Department of Homeland Security. Those were included to give you a chance to see what those actually look like. After that, you'll notice that there's a pink info sort of graphic that opens into a poster that is a guide to healthcare for immigrant New Yorkers. This is jointly produced by the New York Immigration Coalition and the Center for Urban Pedagogy. So I urge you to use this and keep it at your service sites. Following that is a update on each of the policy issues, which will be delivered by Adrian Guzman as usual. And then we've got an article that appeared in today's Times about the repeal of the ACA. That's happening right now. And an update of this month's planning council activities, committee activities, and as always, our June and July calendar.
I'll be glad when he's gone.
David?
All right, we have a quorum now, so the minutes were sent last week. Didn't get any corrections. Are there any corrections to the minutes? No. Minutes are accepted.
For those of you who just joined us, can you introduce yourselves?
Randall Bruce, Consumer College.
Claire Simon, Institute.
Thank you. I'd like to remind you, if you have your cell phones with you, please put them on vibrate. If you need to do extensive texting or emailing or tweeting people, please take that outside. We'd like people to be in the moment and be present and be here and be now. In your packet, there is a New York Times press release that is just a few hours old. And it speaks to the new health care bill being brought out from the Senate. Here's a copy of the legislation. It's only 145 pages long. The last piece of legislation was well over 1,000 pages. There are many elements in this legislation that seek to correct provisions in the Affordable Care Act. I think everyone at this table is well informed and well versed in the differing points of view as to how to deliver health care to Americans. This piece of legislation will affect basically 1/6 of our population. There are many provisions in here that, as a person living with HIV, I would find troubling. There are a host of ways of paying for this, primarily by reducing Medicaid services in the states, rolling back the expansion of Medicaid programs that would adversely affect a lot of people. There are probably some good things in here as well. And I'll leave that up to you to decide. And over the next few days, you'll hear a lot of dissecting of this legislation, and there'll be many calls to action for various groups, people with disabilities, people that are living in nursing homes, middle-income people that have benefited from the Affordable Care Act. So I would encourage you to take whatever action that you feel is appropriate, whether you support this piece of legislation, or you're opposed to it, or whether you would seek some modification. As a trained debater, high school, college debater, I've always learned that it's important for you to know both sides of an issue. And I think that we have a country that's very divided politically. And I think it's important for us to understand that, we all have differing opinions about the way government should operate and the way things should get done in this country. And there's room for reasonable debate and disagreement. But it's important for, if you're on one side of an issue, for you to understand the other side of the issue, for you to walk in their shoes for a while, to get a sense of where they're coming from. It makes you a stronger debater. And you're not, singing a one-song tune all the time. So in the days ahead, and on MSNBC or Fox News or the New York Post or the New York Times or whatever sources of information you get your news from, I would be conscious of that and be conscious about why people are supporting this or why people are opposing this. I'm sure that the health department and the city government, the city council will speak out to what they perceive to be positive or negative elements of this legislation, but it's been long awaited. How long have we heard opposition to Obamacare? Well, this is the moment. Here's the product that many in the House and the Senate and in the White House feel will address all of their concerns about the Affordable Care Act. And I'm sure Adrian will have a few words to say about it when he gets up here. So let's move to the grantee report. We wanted to move this report up on the agenda because there's a lot to talk about. We have some good news and not so good news. I know that Graham and his team have been working really hard in response to our notice of award. And it sort of gives us a sense of what 2018 will look like, which is the work ahead of us now. So Graham, why don't you go ahead and begin.
I'm tempted to just start with the VHIV news section, which would be reading this backwards because there's good news in the news section. So I'm going to go with that temptation. Dimitri has now been named the Deputy Commissioner for the Division of Disease Control. That means our Assistant Commissioner position has also been posted, and we will be recruiting for that. We do have a presence at Pride this year. This is the 4th year we've had a presence at Pride, so it's exciting to have the health department there and marching in the Pride parade. We held a long-term survivors awareness day on June 5th, which is the official HIV long-term survivor awareness day. It was launched 3 years ago by Tess Anderson and Let's Kick Ass, AIDS Survivor Syndrome. This year's theme was HIV resilient, and it marks 36 years since HIV was identified on June 1st, 1981, and 21 years since HAART became available. Last 2 years, the New York City Health Department has commemorated this day, and it was exciting to hold that commemoration in Brooklyn. We have released an LGBTQ healthcare Bill of Rights that was released on June 6th here at the LGBT Center. The Mayor de Blasio published and distributed the first ever LGBTQ healthcare Bill of Rights, which details healthcare protections on local, state, and federal levels to empower LGBTQ New Yorkers to get the healthcare they deserve. So there's a link in here which you would be able to find if you go on the New York City website. It's an exciting document to have up there and to have the standard of care for LGBTQ folks. So that's the good news. Now I'm going to go to the award. The FY 2017 award. We received it 2 days ago. It is a 1.87% decrease from FY 2016. We received a slight increase in our MAI award and a decrease in our formula and supplemental. Our total award, as I said, is a 1.87% decrease, which equals $1.881,164 less than last year. The Plan Council's scenario that they developed and that you approved went up to a 1.75% reduction. So you all will have the task of determining how to make that additional reduction in this next coming month. Also attached, you'll see that there's a grant score that HRSA issues when they issue the final award. We received a score of 95. As reading through this, there are 2 weaknesses cited in the grant award. One is that the application does not clearly state the date of the Planning Council membership training, probably not something that led to significant decline in points. The other one is note that the applicant organization has vacancies in quality management and technical assistance, and they thought that that might impact the organization's capacity to implement and carry out the project. Those positions have since been filled. So not really a good indication of what led to the 5 points. Certainly 95 is a good score for a grant. But what I do know is that the grants generally score high across the nation. I feel good about our grant writing process, and we go through 4 different drafts and have a number of different people review from different perspectives, including an EPI perspective, planning council staff contribute to that effort, planning staff, quality management specialists, as well as research and evaluation analysts. And it also is reviewed by the assistant commissioner and the deputy commissioner as well. So I will be having additional conversations with Stephen Young to determine anything else we could do around our grant award. But as we've been talking about for the last year, 2 years, we are likely to continue to get a decline in our award. And that is because our proportion of the epidemic is shrinking in comparison to the rest of the nation. The supplemental award is also scored based on our demonstration of need section, and in that is the care continuum. And our care continuum outcomes are better than many others in the nation, which may be another reason for our reduction in award. We have a higher viral load suppression rate, we have a higher linkage to care, and our undiagnosed is around 5%, 5.6% for New York City. We're doing very, very well, which means when you do a demonstrated need section, you have to demonstrate need, and when you're comparing us to other jurisdictions, we're doing very, very well. So that is the challenge. Any questions?
I have a question. Last year, didn't you receive a higher rating? At the exact 98% of 97% or something?
We did. It was, I believe, at 98, and I will, like I was saying, I can't determine any additional information from the rating sheet that we received from HRSA, and I will be following up with HRSA to determine if there's any other information that I can get in terms of our grant award.
Jim?
Is the reduction entirely explained by the formula calculations, or is there also a shrinking pot?
It is not a shrinking pot, good question, but it's not a shrinking pot at the federal level. And you can see that our formula award was reduced by 1.23%, our supplemental award was reduced by 3.24%. So the formula award is what we receive, is calculated based on the number of living HIV/AIDS cases. And then the supplemental award is based on that determination of needs section of the grant.
Right, this is my question. Did we do any comparison and contrast to what we did last year to us this year, or is it too early to consider that?
I have not done a side-by-side, but the grant guidance changes each year, so in some places it will be difficult to do a direct translation side-by-side. We always take the previous year's grant application for the new year's grant application. So we use that as the foundation. We update the analyses in terms of epidemiology, and then we also update based on the guidance, any shifts in the guidance that have happened. Because they make slight changes each year, and so we have to adjust the application based on that guidance. So that's helpful.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Graham. I do need to say, the fact that we didn't include the date when the planning council held its new member orientation is kind of a nitpicky thing. We were not asked to report the date. We were not asked to tell where we held the event. We were not asked to tell how many people came. We were asked if we held an orientation. And the answer is yes. So we're kind of being faulted for something that we weren't asked to report about. And it is really kind of annoying. But nonetheless, this is the cards that we have been dealt with, and the priority setting committee will be looking at our fiscal year 17 spending and make the necessary adjustments to accommodate the difference between the scenario that we had anticipated and the dollar awards that we received. And none of this is meant to minimize the work. I really have to say, you can't imagine how many people are involved in writing a $100 million grant application. There are layers and layers and layers of people that contribute to this grant application. And the grant writer that's hired to write this grant application has to take all this information and then put it together and give it one voice and have it make sense. And 95 is incredible in and of itself, and I'm sure that our application compared to other places stands out above many of the others. Okay, our next item.
I wondered if you wanted to say something about the tri-county process, because I mentioned PSRA, but not the tri-county process.
Yeah, well, the next tri-county steering committee meeting, just like in PSRA, will be presented with options for dealing with the cut to the award. So we'll, I know Graham and Public Health Solutions is doing some analysis about where there might be savings to offset the cuts, but we'll be strategizing with Andy, Maria, and the rest of the steering committee to deal with it.
We're going to move to the next item on the agenda about HIV-positive immigrants and undocumented individuals and the challenges that they face in today's climate. What we've been hearing in a number of different settings is the fear that many people who are undocumented and living with HIV are experiencing, not only in coming into a community health center, coming into a service organization, or into a public hospital, but in other aspects of their lives as well, whether it's sending their kids to school or whether it's standing at a 7-Eleven in Nyack New York, hoping to pick up a job for that day, there is a prevalent fear, a prevailing fear. And so this issue about the challenges that are being faced by people who are undocumented and living with HIV, or who are immigrants or on crew call or here on other circumstances, sort of came from last year's community forum, and we heard this repeated a number of times. And so we wanted to invite some speakers to join us today, which Melanie has helped to coordinate, and they're from African Services Committee, and they'll introduce themselves in a minute. But I do want to say a few things about African Services Committee. One of our council members, Amanda Love, works there. And the executive director, Kim Nichols, has served as a planning council member many years ago. Probably at the time I started working with the planning council in the early 90s. I met Kim. She was part of a PWA advisory group there. And what I sat back and marveled at, just as I have with the growth of GMHC and the growth of Housing Works and the growth of AIDS Service Organization, now the Alliance for Positive Change, to sit back and see individuals such as Charles King and Marjorie Hill and Sharon Duke and Kim Nichols nurture and grow and develop a successful business, if you will, an organization that provides service for people with HIV in a very direct and personal way. And African Services Committee has expanded its reach to Ethiopia, and I'm sure a number of other countries now that I'm not even aware of. And I know it's much because of the vision of the executive director there. And so I wanted to give her a shout out because she's one of us. She's an alumni of the Planning Council. And alumni of the Planning Council go on to do great things. You're already doing great things right now, but when you don't have to go to so many meetings, you can focus on other great things. And certainly Kim is amongst that constellation of people. So that said, I'd like you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll move into your presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Deirdre Stradone. I'm one of the staff attorneys at African Services Committee. I've been there for about 3.5 years now, and my work, I solely represent clients who are living with HIV/AIDS, and I represent them in a number of different legal issues, including immigration, but also housing, family, and benefits.
Hi, my name is Salma Magona. I'm actually currently an intern at African Services Committee. I'm a Rising 3L at NYU Law. So this summer, my work focuses around sort of what Deirdre does, doing a lot of work around immigration representation for immigrants who are HIV positive, most of them coming from Africa and the Caribbean area.
So we're very happy to be here today, very honored to be invited to come and speak to you a bit about what we're seeing personally at our organization and what we've heard from other similar organizations in New York City. So the topics that we want to discuss today are a number of the executive orders that have been signed by President Trump, their current status, and then just some rumors that we've heard about other executive orders that may be coming out. The fears that our undocumented clients are facing right now. A quick discussion of know your rights. So if you do work directly with undocumented clients, you can let them know what their rights are. A discussion of crew call status, what that is and how it's changing now under Trump. And then quickly about the travel bans and their current situation. So I wanted to start by talking about this term sanctuary city. So you might have been hearing that a lot lately and maybe aren't too clear on the definition. So a sanctuary city is one like New York City or San Francisco, LA, cities that limit their cooperation with Department of Homeland Security, so with ICE officials. So they don't want to assist ICE in enforcing immigration laws. So we want to do this to reduce the fears that our clients are facing. Fears that their families could be torn apart, fears that they might get deported from the United States. And we also want them to be willing to come forward and access benefits that either they or their children are eligible for, to enroll their children in school, to access health benefits, and to report crimes against them. So a large part of this, which we want to make sure our clients are aware, means that the police are not allowed to ask people their immigration status if they're reporting a crime, and city employees are also not allowed to ask their immigration status unless it's just to determine what benefits they are eligible for. So right now there was an executive order signed by Trump against the sanctuary cities. It was an executive order that covered a number of issues, but one in particular was talking about sanctuary cities and saying that they violate federal law by not cooperating with ICE. And because of this, they're not eligible to receive certain federal grants. So a number of cities filed against this executive order, and the federal judge in the Ninth Circuit, so in California, said that these cities that filed against the order could face immediate irreparable harm if the policy was put into place, and that the constitutional challenge could succeed. So it's not saying that this executive order is unconstitutional right away, but it's just saying that we do have possibility of succeeding on that claim. So that part of the order has been stayed, so it's stopped. The government can appeal it, and it will go before the Ninth Circuit Court, but we haven't heard anything more about that right now. So the current fears that our clients are facing, I wanted to talk about a few different areas that we're seeing this in. So one is about accessing benefits, attending court proceedings, and reporting crimes. So we're seeing this among all of our immigrant clients. So our name is African Services Committee, but we do represent people from all over. We're getting a lot more clients from Central and South America, from the Caribbean, and from Africa. So we're seeing this among all of them. So there's not one particular area that seems to be being targeted more than others. So like I said earlier, city employees are generally required to protect the confidentiality of a person's immigration status. So they can only be asking these questions just to determine what you're eligible for, and cannot be reporting people to ICE if they're coming in and it's known that they're undocumented. We want to make sure that our clients are aware that there are benefits that they're eligible for no matter what their immigration status is, including emergency Medicaid, receiving care at the emergency room, ADAP, which is the AIDS Drug Assistance Program, which is for clients who are HIV/AIDS positive, and it allows them to receive medical treatment and medication with an HIV diagnosis. And then all children, whether they're documented or undocumented, are eligible for public health care depending on the family's income. So even if a parent is not eligible for public benefits, their US citizen children are eligible. So there's this term, mixed eligibility households. So you want to make sure clients are aware that even if they can't access benefits, their children can still receive health care and SNAP and other cash assistance. So what are we seeing? I personally have not seen this among my clients, but I've heard a lot of reports just through emails with other service providers that people are afraid to apply for benefits that either they or their children are eligible for, or they're withdrawing from benefits they're already receiving. So mostly SNAP is the big one, the food stamps. Because people are just afraid that ICE is going to learn about them and learn their address and come and pick them up. Another thing that we're seeing is among people who have green cards, so legal permanent residents. Depending on how long they've had their green card, they're eligible to receive certain benefits, and they're afraid that by receiving these benefits, when they apply to become a citizen, they're not going to be able to become citizens. So this is just really dangerous for everybody, but especially our clients that are living with HIV, because they really need to make sure they have housing and proper nutrition. So another term that you might be hearing a lot is this term public charge. So this is a ground of inadmissibility, which means it can affect your ability to become a green card holder or a US citizen. This term has been around for 100 years. It's not anything new. It's just, it hasn't been as important as it's becoming now based on Trump's rhetoric. So when you are applying to get your green card or applying for naturalization, which is to get your citizenship, you have to say if you have received public benefits. And so people usually have to admit that they have received them. You can't, be dishonest in the application, but immigration officials can look at the whole picture. So they can look at your age, they can look at people's health, they can look at the fact whether someone may or may not have had a work permit and haven't been able to support themselves to decide if this person's going to become a public charge. But now there's an executive order that has been leaked. It hasn't been signed, so it still is subject to edits, but it's basically redefining what a public charge is, and it's including more means-tested benefits. So this can affect a lot more people and their ability to get their green card or become citizens if they receive benefits that they're entitled to. So for example, green card holders, they are entitled to benefits like food stamps and Medicaid and certain educational benefits. But when it comes time for them to naturalize, under this executive order, if they admit to getting SNAP, they could become deportable, meaning they could be removed from the United States. Another thing is too, refusing to admit immigrants who might become public charges. So clients that are now citizens are petitioning or requesting that their family members from abroad come into the US as green card holders. They might start to look to see if that person would be able to afford themselves, basically, if they come to the United States, or will they be on benefits? And so they might put prerequisites on people coming to the United States, like a certain educational level and certain amount of assets. And then another big thing that we're seeing that could be concerning is seeking the repayment of benefits from sponsors. So when someone applies to get their green card, they have to have a person who's a citizen or a green card holder file what's called an affidavit of support, showing that their income is high enough to support that person if they get a green card. So people do these all the time. Never do we see the government going after that sponsor for repayment of benefits that green card holder has received. But now Trump wants to seek repayment of those benefits. So that could be really damaging to people that are trying to help out a friend or family member by filing the affidavit of support, that they could basically be sued for repayment of the benefits that the other person received. Another thing that we're seeing is a fear of attending court appearances. So court is not what's called a sensitive location. So I define sensitive location a little bit later in the presentation, but a sensitive location is basically places that ICE cannot go to arrest people. So they cannot go to schools, they can't go to hospitals, which we want to make sure our clients are aware of. They can't go to places of religious practice, so like church or mosque, and they can't go to like a wedding celebration or a funeral. But other than that, ICE can arrest anybody who there is probable cause to exist they violated the immigration laws. So they can arrest anyone who's overstayed a visa. They can arrest anyone who already has an order of removal. And ICE wants to go to court to arrest people because they view it as safer. And in order to enter court, you have to go through security, so people won't have weapons, it's considered less of a threat, so it's a great place for ICE to go and pick up people. We at African Services haven't personally seen any of our clients arrested, but we've heard a number of cases where this is happening. One of the more concerning ones that just came out is a woman who is a victim of sex trafficking. She was in court. ICE came in to arrest her because she was charged with prostitution. So this woman has been a victim of trafficking, is being charged with prostitution, and was picked up by ICE. So it's really concerning. It really affects our ability to represent people in places like family court. Do we really want our clients going to court for child support payments or for custody, where they could end up being picked up by ICE? So this is really concerning. So this is just an explanation of some of what I've heard through emails with other organizations. So they're targeting people who have no criminal records. It's just that they've overstayed their visa, or maybe they were arrested for something small like a misdemeanor. And what's really concerning is hearing that court officers, sorry, I have a Rhode Island accent, they're playing a role by blocking the doors or delaying the call of cases and communicating with the ICE officers to tell them when the defendant is going to be in court. Another big thing that we are seeing is people being afraid to report crimes. So people are afraid to go to court. They're afraid to go to criminal court and testify against somebody. And this is really dangerous because, especially among our clients that are women, they're victims of domestic violence. They're not going to report their husband for the domestic violence because they're afraid. And if the perpetrator of the crime is a United States citizen, they're gonna intimidate the victim or the witness and say, if you tell on me, I will call ICE. Or maybe situations with landlords, if you don't do this, or if you complain about the apartment, I will tell ICE. People using that as a threat, and it's no longer an empty threat. Now it's becoming more viable. So despite all of these fears that our clients are facing, we want them to know that they still have rights. So we did hand out like a little pocket card. I don't know if we had enough for everybody, but it does kind of quickly talk about what people's rights are. So at your home, if someone knocks on your door and you don't know who it is, you don't have to answer it. ICE can only come in the house with a warrant signed by a judge. So the example that is in the handouts is just an administrative warrant that would be signed by an immigration official. That is not sufficient. Even though it says warrant of arrest, it's not enough. It needs to be a criminal arrest warrant signed by a judge. If you are approached by ICE and and ICE asks you questions, either be honest or just choose to remain silent and tell them that. Say, I don't want to speak. We want them to hold on to any of their immigration documents that they have. So if they have a pending green card application or a pending asylum case, hold on to something that proves that you do have lawful status here in the US. And we just want them to stay calm. Don't resist or fight arrest. Just go quietly and just don't say anything, and definitely don't sign anything without speaking to an attorney, especially if English isn't your first language and you don't understand what people are saying to you or what you're signing. So this is a little bit more about the sensitive locations. So enforcement actions, meaning ICE is not supposed to arrest people at these types of places. But like I said, courthouses are not viewed as a sensitive location, so it is really concerning. If you are arrested for a crime, we want to make sure clients know that they have the right to remain silent and to have an attorney. Also, an important thing is for clients to tell their criminal attorney what their immigration status is, because this can really affect your ability to get immigration status in the future. So even if it seems like a small crime, like a violation or a misdemeanor, this can have really negative impacts on your ability to adjust later. Right now, as of 2015, ICE no longer has an office at Rikers. And we want to make sure that clients know to tell their family members what their full name is, their aliases, their birthday, and what's called an alien number, if they have one. An alien number is given to anybody who applies for an immigration benefit. So ICE detainers, this kind of comes into play with the idea that we're a sanctuary city. So if someone is arrested, ICE will send a request to the NYPD or the Department of Corrections to ask that when that person is going to be released from prison, that ICE is notified so they can take them into immigration detention. NYPD and Department of Corrections do not honor such requests unless it's a warrant by a federal judge or the person was convicted of a violent or serious crime or is a possible match on the terrorist watch list. So you'll hear stories that undocumented immigrants will just be released from Rikers Island, and they shouldn't be detained by immigration. So a big thing we want to make sure clients are aware of is their healthcare rights in immigration detention. So the U.S. Constitution does recognize their rights to receive adequate healthcare, even if they do not have lawful status here in the United States. What's the name of it? New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. They just did a really great report that I can share with the council. I don't want to take credit for this part. This is from them. They did a report on people who had been detained in immigration detention, kind of just what they've experienced if they do have health diagnoses. So there's incomplete intake assessments, denial of continued effective treatment, language access barriers. So we want to make sure clients are aware that there should be someone speaking to them in their native language, delays in medical treatment, and then release without discharge planning. So being released without any plan set in place so you can continue to receive care. So a big thing that I wanted to talk about today is the impact of Trump's administration on PRU-Call. So the term PRU-Call means person residing under color of law. So this is more of a benefits term rather than an immigration term. It means anybody that is living here in the United States without permanent immigration status. So it doesn't discuss people who are US citizens or green card holders, but it's people who are here with some type of pending immigration application or maybe part of an application that's been approved that shows that immigration knows they're living here and aren't trying to remove them from the country. So a main focus of African Services immigration intake is to determine if our clients are already PRU-Call or if there's a way that we can make them PRU-Call. This is really important because here in New York City, they would be able to access HACA benefits, cash assistance, and Medicaid if we can make them PRU-Call. So the way that this has changed is, in the past, there were a number of applications that we would assist our clients with filing, which might not lead to anything permanent, but it would at least get them PRU-Call status. So the two big examples that have really changed lately is filing the I-130 and the affirmative deferred action. So that's what's in your packets as well. So the I-130 is the first step to get a green card. It's showing that you have a family relationship with a US citizen. So a parent, a spouse, a sibling. A lot of times people do have that family relationship, but due to other factors of their immigration history, they will never be able to get a green card. But by filing that I-130 and having it approved, the clients are HACA eligible. They are PRU-Call. But now we are afraid to file those because if USCIS, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, learns that this person can never get their green card and they have a criminal history or they've already been ordered removed in the past, it's possible that USCIS will tell ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So those are like two different arms of the Department of Homeland Security. USCIS deals more with affirmative applications and ICE is the enforcement. So usually they stay very separate, but it's possible that USCIS will tell ICE about these people, and we don't want to risk that. So now it's becoming more of a conversation with our clients. Here are the risks. If you file the I-130, it's possible that you could get detained by ICE. But some clients are so desperate to get on Medicaid that they want to risk it. So now we need to be more careful with filing those. And affirmative deferred action requests. So we do those for clients who are living here undocumented. They've never been in immigration court. They've never been ordered removed. They have no way of getting a green card, but they're so sick that they need more than just ADAP. They need to get Medicaid. They need to get work permits. They need more care. So the deferred action request goes to USCIS and it explains, here is this client, here is their whole history. They're very sick. If they go back to their home country, that would be detrimental to their health. Please let them stay here. So the deferred action requests are usually very big. So I just printed up a table of contents just to show you what we would put in them. Now, again, that's something that we're being more cautious of filing because it's putting someone on the radar. It's basically saying to USCIS and possibly ICE, hey, here's this person, they have no status, here's their address, their birthday, their family members, come pick them up. So we're being more concerned. I was involved in a meeting with USCIS and they told us that they're still accepting deferred action applications, but as an agency and speaking to other agencies that file these, we're really not doing them right now. Okay, and travel bans.
So right after the inauguration, we heard a lot about the executive order that was signed by President Trump that focused heavily on Muslim majority countries. It had a lot of other things within it, and African Services Committee hasn't really experienced many issues with our clients in regards to the travel ban, but we just wanted to provide an overview of what's going on with it because it does impact immigrant populations here in New York. So the first executive order was signed in January 2017, and it came out And mostly people focused on the temporary 90-day bar on non-citizens from the 7 majority Muslim countries, which included Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. The executive order did also suspend resettlement of Syrian refugees. It paused the entire refugee resettlement program for 120 days for a sort of evaluation of the program to see if there was any way to make it more safe and to do more screening of refugees before they came into the country. It decreased the number of refugees who would be admitted into the United States. And so everyone heard about people going to the airports because the people who were immediately impacted by the executive order were people who were in the air coming into the United States who had visas who were being told that they could not enter because the executive order had passed. And so that is why people were focusing so heavily on the part of the executive order that talked about the ban on the majority Muslim countries, and that's why it's known as like the Muslim ban. The other parts of the executive order did not immediately start to impact people. There are a lot of legal challenges to the executive order. So on February 3rd, a district court judge in Washington State blocked the ban, like nationwide, saying there's a stay and the entire executive order was stopped, meaning that people should still be allowed in. And we heard a lot of stories about customs not following this block that was placed by the court. And then on February 9th, the Ninth Circuit, which is again California, they ruled against it, reinstating the ban, saying that what Washington State had said was fine and that the ban should stay in place. And then by February 16th, the government said that they would release a new executive order, basically trying to fix whatever issues they thought the court had seen with the original executive order to make it constitutional, I suppose. So the second executive order was signed on March 6th, but it actually didn't go into effect until March 16th. And basically what this executive order tried to do was, in a way, make what was released earlier seem less terrible. So instead of 7 Muslim majority countries, there were 6 now. I believe Iraq was taken out of the mix. And then something else that they did in response to a lot of the backlash that happened at the airports when people were arriving and were being told that they couldn't enter the country, they included a provision that exempted permanent residents, so people who may have been abroad but were permanent residents of the US who were coming from these countries or had passports or something from these countries and were returning, they were being blocked. And so they passed this exemption saying those people and people who had visas as of the date that the first executive order was signed and until this executive order went into effect should not be barred from entry. So what this means is until this executive order is in effect, technically anyone who has a visa or is a permanent resident of the United States from these countries should still be allowed in. They also dropped language in the first executive order. There was language basically stating that there should be some sort of preference given to people who are from religious minorities in these countries, basically meaning Christians who were coming from these Muslim majority countries, and so they dropped that language. And then also it reversed the indefinite ban on Syrian refugees and replaced it with a 120-day freeze. And so since the executive order was signed, there have been many decisions that have came out. The first large one was the district court in Hawaii issued a ban, but the ban only focused on Section 2 and Section 6. So Section 2 is the section that deals with the Muslim majority countries, what is known as the Muslim ban. And then Section 6 is what deals with the halt on the refugee program. And then on March 16th, the district court in Maryland also ruled on it, but they ruled specifically on Section 2C, which is the section of the executive order that specifically lists the 6 Muslim majority countries. And then in May of this year, in a case known as Iraq v. Trump, the International Refugee Assistance Project v. Trump, they upheld the Maryland court's ruling, basically saying that Section 2C of the travel ban or of the executive order is unconstitutional. And then again, the Ninth Circuit, which is the California area, upheld Hawaii's decision as well in regards to Section 2C. So right now, what we're seeing is it started off with people really trying to target the entirety of Section 2 and the entirety of Section 6. So that's basically everything that was discussing people from the Muslim majority countries in the refugee program. And now it's really what is being fought in the court is Section 2C, which is the part that's seen as unconstitutional, where they specifically list these countries and are saying that there has to be a halt for 90 days for people to enter the country. So there was a lot of discussion about whether or not the federal government would petition the Supreme Court to appeal it, and they did. So on June 1st, the DOJ did petition to the Supreme Court. So right now we're waiting to see whether the Supreme Court will take the case. And the DOJ asked that if the Supreme Court takes the case, while they're waiting to hear the case, that they issue something basically staying the block, basically saying that the executive order would still be in effect until the Supreme Court makes its decision. So right now we haven't heard anything. It's all up in the air. So as of right now, Section 2C, which is the section of the executive order that specifically lists the 6 Muslim majority countries, it is blocked, meaning that people from those countries should still be allowed to enter into the United States. But unfortunately, the other parts of the executive order are still in effect. And so a lot of them dealing with like refugee populations are still in effect, and the number of refugees allowed into the country is still decreased, and a lot of consulates aren't changing that.
So that's it, I guess we can open it for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there questions? Let's begin with Lisa.
So what happens if the Supreme Court decides it doesn't want to hear the case?
Then the lower courts would hold, meaning that the state would, the Section 2, the Muslim ban would be blocked. It wouldn't be in effect. Yes.
Zach?
If I could pick up, I'm sorry.
Zach?
So, since this is the Ryan White Training Council, and we're funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and we talked about the SNAP program, but there's many other federally funded programs. Some do and do not pass through lower forms of government, so some go to the state and then the state administers it, but some go directly from the federal government to the client. And that's the case with Ryan White. Some Ryan White money passes through state and city, some is provided directly to the client from the federal government. Legally, do you know anything of their authority to require that those federally funded programs ask participants their immigration status and or refuse the provision of those services to persons who are not, who do not have legal status?
So I do think that they're allowed to ask clients' immigration status to see if they're eligible for these benefits. But I'm not sure if at the federal level, if they find out someone's undocumented, if they have the ability to report this person to ICE, that I'm not sure about. I imagine that they would be able to do that because it is federal and not protected in the same way that New York City is protected. So I'm sorry, I don't know the full answer to your question.
John?
If I'm picked up by ICE, right, and I'm before the judge, now I know usually they give you the next public defender that's in line. Could I specifically ask for an HIV-specific lawyer like yourselves? Or do I have to take whatever the court public defender gives me, which is going to be ICE friendly?
Okay, well, so if you're picked up by ICE, you wouldn't be in criminal court. You would be going to immigration court. And in immigration court, you are not guaranteed counsel in the same way that you are in criminal court. So most likely at someone's first appearance in immigration court is called a master calendar hearing. So this is very brief. It's just a way to basically admit or deny the charges against you that brought you to immigration court. And then at that time, you can explain to the judge, I don't want to answer these questions, can I please have more time to find an attorney? And so the judge will adjourn the case for a period of time for you to find an attorney. And then at that time, you would be able to try to find an attorney that would represent you for free.
Lisa?
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation. I have a real concern. I got to kind of play devil's advocate because I'm seeing in here language like officers are prohibited and sanctuary cities, and when it comes down to it, what does that really mean if you have court officers working with ICE to delay cases and information like that? The things that we know people are not supposed to do are actually being done. The reason why I'm saying that is, I know we are a country of laws. We create things that we need to put down on paper to say that we have protections in place. But you can't change in a man's mind what's in his heart. He will break the law because of what he believes in his heart. So I would be real concerned about encouraging people to go on paper and expose themselves. And it's not the same topic, but it makes a point just with the verdict of Philando Castile. Philando, you know what I'm talking about. This man was a citizen of the country. There are sometimes people in this country that are citizens that don't get treated like citizens. If I'm a non-citizen and I'm watching you treat a citizen a certain way, why am I going to believe that you're going to treat me with with that law of the land mentality? So it concerns me. I'm glad that there are things in place, but you got a kid that was taken out of a prom. If I was the prom, the kids at the prom that were watching, you put a mark on my memory of my prom by dragging somebody out. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we're being educated, and this is good information to have because people need to be educated, but I don't think that a lot of people are really following the law. You know, so you have an organization like yours, and I think that we need a clearinghouse of other organizations like yours to be able to refer families to, for the simple fact that their family member may have gone to Walmart and now they're dragged out in the parking lot, but we're not supposed to do that. You know what I mean? So I just needed to put that out there just so that we're really thinking about what's on paper and what's really happening.
Is this?
Good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. I work with Kings County in the HIV division, so we refer a lot of people to African services. And thank you for what you do there. Concerns me what I just heard about crew call, because a lot of our patients are undocumented, and they come in needing services that would extend to HASA. And so I'm wondering, is this, I think I heard you say that you're not taking any more crew call applications. You're not working with crew call anymore at the moment.
No, that's no, I'm sorry, if that's how it came across, that's not what I meant. We're just being more careful on how we help clients get crew call status.
So, I think I heard you say that you were giving them the option.
Well, specifically with that Form I-130, or a deferred action application, those we would speak very carefully with the client and explain to them the risks of applying and what could possibly happen. But for example, we've been working a lot with LGBT, HIV positive clients from Russia, and we are helping them apply for asylum because they are eligible for asylum, and that will help them get crew call status. So we're still doing what we can to help people get crew call status We're just being more careful of putting people on the radar if they don't have permanent forms of relief available. So someone that we help apply for asylum, once that asylum case is pending, their crew call, they can get HASA and Medicaid. They will also go in front of an asylum officer in a few years and present their case and have the ability to become asylees. So that's a safer application to make. But something like the Form I-130, if a person is never eligible to get their green card or it'd be very complicated and difficult to get it, we're being more cautious if we want to put them on the radar. Whereas a year ago or 2 years ago, we were filing a lot of I-130s to help people get crew call status, knowing that they would never get a green card. Okay, so sorry if I misspoke.
Dr. Milano. Thank you very much for the presentation. That's really good. We go to the diversion program in Queens, and we were last Friday when the ICE was there and took this woman away. And now that we know that is happening, we have the diversion course in Brooklyn, in South Bronx, in the city. Is any suggestion on what can we tell those potential clients that to be picked up and deported? I think that the feeling that many of them are going to run away, we run the transgender program, or we had a good number of individuals who are vaccinated, the labor HIV. And it really was a very standing wake up to find out that they were inside the courthouse last Friday. So is there any way that that information can be disseminated without doing damaging to the access to care, or what other resources they have so we can inform them in case that happens to them?
In case the client's picked up in court. So I think we want to make sure that they know that it is a possibility that they can be picked up if they're undocumented. We want to make sure they know to remain silent and to ask for an attorney. Hopefully they maybe have an attorney's card with them, and that way they can call somebody or make sure our family members are aware that they've been detained. Because there isn't anything we can do to prevent ICE from detaining these people. If they are here unlawfully, they have broken the law, and ICE has every right to pick them up. You would just want to make sure an attorney knows right away to file certain applications to try to get them out of detention. So it's just scary and unfortunate that we have nothing that we can do or any really good advice that we can give, because ICE can go and pick up anybody they want.
Denise?
Just to let folks know, health and hospitals, all public hospitals have a contract with NILAC, the New York Legal Action Group, and they have lawyers on site at all public hospitals, and they have extended the care that they can provide to the immigration help. So you can get immigration help from lawyers at NILAC at any of the public hospitals. And it's not exclusive to the public hospitals. If you go on I just checked, if you go on the NILAC website, you'll see there are other facilities too that have NILAC staff there. So you can also talk to your clients and let them know free legal help is available in many cases where they're getting help.
Thank you. Faye?
Hi, thank you so much. So what is happening with the children? And say the child is like 16 and they have resident status, they were born here. What is happening with those children? Are they being placed in foster care, or they're being deported with their parents as well? And so I know that you guys are only assisted, and by the way, I love you guys because I refer a lot of people to you guys. As someone from the Caribbean, so just say kudos. So what is happening to, do you represent the kids as well, even though their parents are the ones positive and not the kids? And what about siblings? Like if the individual was housing other people in the house as well, and their siblings who are undocumented?
Okay, sure. Thank you for the questions. So for the first one, for a child that was born here and is a U.S. citizen, they would not be deported from the United States. They're a citizen. They're allowed to stay here. Whether the parent would want to take the child with them if they're deported, that would be a different conversation to have with the parent. what we've been trying to do, as we work with a lot of undocumented parents, is to help them make plans for the future care and custody of their children in case they are removed from the country. So setting up guardianships. So in case they're deported or in case they're detained, they have another adult who knows that they will need to take care of their child. So that's one thing. But then also, having a child here in the United States does garner certain sympathy factors. So if a person is being ordered removed from the country or they're going to immigration court, an attorney could make an argument to the judge, this person has lived here for this many years, they're living with HIV, they have US citizen children, please take sympathy on the case and let them stay here. And before, a few years ago, that would happen pretty often, and it'd be called prosecutorial discretion. So basically in immigration court, similar in criminal court, that someone might be charged with murder, but then they do a plea deal and they get manslaughter, for example. I don't really know much about criminal law. But in immigration court, you can make these arguments and show the sympathetic side to somebody's story and get the DHS or the ICE attorney to agree to prosecutorial discretion and just close the case. So I think with a situation like that, with a mom that has HIV, she's the sole caregiver of US citizen children, hopefully the case would be able to be closed. And then your question about representing the children and siblings. So the grant that I'm working under is actually through the AIDS Institute. So we have funding through both Ryan White and the AIDS Institute. Under the grant that I'm working on, we work with families and their impacted family members. So if mom has a household with children in it and the children are not positive, I can still represent the children because it's working to bring stability to the whole family. So in a situation like that, I could do work to help the children.
Maria?
Okay, now a person that may have PRUCOL, is there any specific time or length of time that they need to start doing their paperwork for citizenship or legal residency?
So it depends. So for the most cases, after you have a green card for 5 years, then you can apply to become a citizen. So that's one answer for that. As for the other part, it's very complicated to answer. It really depends on a person's immigration history. So for example, if someone enters the United States on a visa and they overstay that visa, and then they get married to a US citizen, they would be able to get a green card here in the United States, and they can apply as soon as they're married or as soon as they have the money to afford all the fees.
Also, if they get PRUCOL, would it also be because of their medical status and they would need health care here?
No, so PRUCOL doesn't have to do with your medical status. For purposes at African Services, because our clients are all HIV/AIDS positive, we work, it kind of comes all together. But PRUCOL is just a benefit status. So anybody that's here that has a pending application, whether they're positive or not, they would be PRUCOL. But for purposes of accessing HASA, they would need to be PRUCOL and HIV positive.
The reason I'm asking that is because this person has been on PRUCOL for many years, and I think now with all this going on that's happening, she may be afraid of doing any process with work, paperwork.
Yeah, and that's a fear that we see a lot. So if you want, I can give you my card and the client can call me and we can do an immigration intake and speak to them about their eligibility to apply for a green card or even how she has PRUCOL status, because people get PRUCOL in a number of different ways.
Lisa, I'll give you a second. Billy is next. We have time for a few more questions. So, Billy?
I just have a question of clarity. Does the master calendar or the doctors have potential, not potential, but scheduled immigrants, to come to court? And do they have their address and what have you? Is that information only for the court, or can ICE just come and ask for their information and review that information? And may not get the person in court, but ICE will go where the person lives and arrest them.
Yeah, so ICE would have that information. So when you're in immigration court, hopefully you would have an attorney representing you, but then the attorney for the government is an ICE attorney. So you are required to keep all of your information up to date. So they'll ask you on the record, what is your address? They'll confirm that the address that you were served with these papers is still your current address. Every time you go to court, they say, are you still living at this address? If you move, you're required to update the court of your new address.
What I'm trying to say is, they may decide, you know, to have your cold feet and don't show up to court. But then ISIS already had that information, so then they can go to their residence and arrest them.
They could, yes. And then also something to note too is that if ICE does come to your household, you let them in, or they do have a warrant to go in to arrest you, they can do collateral arrest too. So they can ask every person that's in your house, what is your immigration status? Do you have proof of that? And they can arrest everybody. So it's not the same as it was under the Elder Bush's era, where there's like these workplace raids, but they're still, if they're going after an individual, they could possibly arrest others that are with that person.
Lisa?
Thank you. I have a question regarding housing. If you're here and you've been renting and you've been living in an apartment, and I'm referring to a news report recently of a landlord that created a document that said you had to show proof that you were a resident of this country, or you would face eviction and he would not renew the lease. He had been exposed, and yes, it's against the law, but he did it anyway. You know what I mean? So under housing, if you're undocumented and you are living in a residence, what recourse do you have? What should you do?
So if you're facing eviction, so something like that, like a landlord just unilaterally changing the locks or saying I'm going to evict you, they can't do that. In order for someone to be evicted, the landlord would have to take them to housing court. There would have to be an order of eviction and a sheriff's warrant.
Now, this was a renewal of a lease. He created a document to go along with the renewal of a lease.
But if the tenant's been living in the apartment, they have certain rights. So even if the landlord doesn't want to renew the lease and the person continues to live in the apartment, the landlord would have to take them to housing court to evict them. So if you have a specific client that you're thinking of, I'm happy to talk to them. Yeah, I think I have enough copies of my card, so I can hand it out.
Okay, John, I just want to give some audience members a time to ask you questions if they have. Okay, go ahead.
I want to go back to that housing thing. I think I kind of understand this. If my landlord sends me a letter telling me, well, I'm an immigrant, okay, I don't want you here, okay, basically. So I'm not going to renew your lease. Now you're saying, well, he's got to take it to court and this, that, and everything. Well, you know what? For 10 cents, I call ICE and come knock on the door at 12 o'clock. I don't have to go to court no more. And now you're evicted. What recourse does this person have? I mean, how can he say that it was the landlord that illegally did what he did? And that's the reason why he got me out. Because he couldn't get me out any other way, so he used ICE as a mechanism to do this.
Yeah, and that's what we're really afraid of, is we're afraid that landlords are going to threaten tenants with, yeah, if you don't leave the apartment, I'm gonna call ICE on you. Realistically, I don't know how one would even go about calling ICE and reporting an undocumented immigrant living in their house. And again, even if the landlord does that and says this person is undocumented, they're living at this address, ICE can't go to the person's house unless they have a warrant. And the chances of a judge signing a warrant for something like that, I don't see it really happening. So I think, not to say it's a completely empty threat, but I don't think it's something that someone needs to be actively afraid of happening. Which I know, coming from me as a citizen, and it might not give someone comfort, but I just don't think that that's really recourse that a landlord could do.
Well, you do have friendly judges, meaning that they might be friendly to ICE. It says, you know what, go, leave me alone, I'm going out tonight. I'm just going to give it to you and worry about it later. So that's what,
It's possible, yeah. I mean, I don't see it happening, but yes, it could definitely happen.
Okay, one more question. Paul?
So you mentioned that we showed the door, the warrant. What happens if accidentally they let somebody into their home or their apartment, or they buzz them in, and once they open the door, are they automatically giving up? They're opening up the house to an officer, who then they can just come in and then take them out, or?
Yes, they'd be able to. That's why we want to make sure people keep their doors closed. Even if you buzz someone into your building, don't open your door unless you know who it is. And if they say they're ICE, they have a warrant, tell them to slide it under the door. And then if you have clients who are in that situation, I will write down my cell phone number on my card, and if your clients want to take a picture, because they're not sure if the warrant is the correct warrant, I would be happy to take a look. If, we could figure out some way to have that telephone chain work. Because people might be confused. They see, especially like the sample I gave you guys, it says warrant for arrest of an alien on it. So people are going to think, oh, this is a warrant, you can arrest me. And no, it's not. It's not signed by a judge. So we just want to be really clear that clients are seeing that it's signed by a judge.
Well, thank you both. Sam, really nice knowing that we have people like you on our side. And for those of you council members that are not familiar with the legal services that Bryan Planning Council pays for, we'll follow up by sending you information as to how to contact those legal services if you find any of your friends or clients who have HIV are in trouble. All right, Matt's here. Hi, Matt.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late. It's a small minor healthcare bill. We're trying to figure out what to do with today.
I'm going to turn to Planning Council updates. Just a time check. It's 4:30. Quite possible we might be out up here a little bit early. It's a beautiful day. So for Planning Council Chair updates, I just want to briefly talk about our last meeting where we had a presentation on safe consumption sites. We want to assemble a task force, and we will. We are waiting on a study that the City Council has commissioned on the feasibility of safe consumption sites, and they're doing some kind of a cost analysis. Not cost analysis, they're looking at the feasibility of it. And it's a good study, so we wanted to wait until we had the information at hand to begin to do our work. I do anticipate the task force to work very rapidly, probably over the months when we're on recess in August and September. Not looking for more than half a dozen people and maybe members from the community to do some literature review, to understand what's happening in Canada, how they've managed to implement safe consumption sites there, what's happening in Seattle, and coming up with some recommendation and some advice to give to the mayor, because the mayor hasn't spoken publicly about this, as to the opinion of this mayoral planning body. Paul?
Just a little update on safe or supervised consumption sites. Yesterday, a bill was released into New York State, it was announced yesterday. It's bill number 8534, and it is, I believe it was Levinson who introduced it. Actually, I might be wrong on the name, but they are looking for co-sponsors. I do have some information from local that was released yesterday, which I'll share with anybody who's interested.
Thank you. So it's a moving target. With regard to community briefing, our last community briefing, we received the transcripts from the community briefing. We're calling through it to come up with some recommendations that came out of those sessions. The Needs Assessment Committee is working on that. Hopefully we'll have some clarity about categorizing some of the issues that were raised there and then addressing them in our community structure. Matt?
The safe consumption sites, I think if I'm not going to be the chair, I'm going to be some sort of co-chair to the process. So we will be looking for suggestions for individuals or organizations that should be on the safe consumption task force, if you want to call it that. So please send me any recommendations, although I do want to keep it small. A committee of 25 is not what I would call a task force.
Adrian, are you here?
Yes. I've picked up the bill, I hadn't heard of it.
Here, I've got a copy for you, here. Here.
Oh. No, I'm just not right now. I think I can.
Do you have the mic, Rob?
So here's Adrian Guzman, our former council member, now staff member at DOH&H, and overly extended, but he always manages to find time to keep us up to date on policy issues. Adrian?
I blame Graham for starting things out such a pessimistic, but I feel like every presentation is more pessimistic than the last. I will try to cheerfully communicate some of the news that's happened. The slide deck is a handout in your folders, current topics and HIV law and policy. And as a best practice, as a general rule, I'm going to consistently include the major New York State legislation and regulations that passed over the last couple of months. New York State is still developing implementation plans, dear colleagues letters, guidance materials, and until those are published, I'm going to just keep reiterating exactly what the changes to the HIV testing, prevention, treatment, and confidentiality laws are. So you can communicate that to your networks. But for the purpose of today's presentation, I wanted to focus on the healthcare reform activity that's happening, the President's full federal budget released a couple weeks ago, and what that means for people affected by HIV, specifically here in New York. So, if you guys want to turn to page 5 of the handout, I'll just quickly go through the previous iterations of the efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, until we arrived at this morning's announcement. So if you remember a couple months ago in March, the House GOP introduced the American Health Care Act, which was its first official plan to repeal and replace the ACA. And I listed a sort of laundry list of the general provisions that the AHCA set forth. A couple days after that, the Congressional Budget Office issued a report on the bill, finding that it would reduce the federal deficit by over $337 billion over 10 years, but that it would leave 24 million more Americans uninsured during that time. So in large part due to the CBO findings and public outreach, the Speaker pulled the bill from the House floor. And following month, on the top of page 6, I outlined the amended bill. So a representative from New Jersey announced an amendment that was intended to find some middle ground between House Republicans to push this healthcare reform bill forward. And essentially, it would retain most of the AHCA's age-based tax credits, all of the restrictions on expanding Medicaid, and tax breaks for high-income people. Now, this is important. What this amendment did was it would allow states to seek waivers from certain Affordable Care Act protections, protections that were put into place by the Obama administration around healthcare. That includes community health ratings, essential health benefits, and invisible risk pools. All the state has to do is offer an alternative that would reduce costs, increase enrollments, or strengthen health insurance marketplaces. And if HHS doesn't deny that waiver application, the waiver is granted automatically. So it's a sort of opt-out system. So it's very likely that a lot of states would get away with ending all of these patient protections that the Affordable Care Act has put into place. So I think what's most relevant to us is that while this bill explicitly prohibits restricting coverage to people with pre-existing conditions, by virtue of this waiver system, that's exactly what it would do. It would reduce coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, including HIV. So in May, the House passed the amended bill, and the CBO released its report. And on the bottom of page 6, I wrote, Senate Republicans are working to craft a separate repeal and replace bill. And this is like the first time I've ever gotten my presentation to Jan and Daryl and David before, like 5 minutes before the meeting. And of course, this is the day that changes happened on the train right over here. So it's important to note that this morning, the Senate released its counter proposal to this bill. The Senate has been working for the last couple of weeks on developing its own repeal and replace plan. So I wanted to just go through maybe 30 seconds of what of how this bill differs from the House bill that passed. So first of all, it actually proposes deeper Medicaid cuts, which I think Jen mentioned. Medicaid accounts for 1 in 5 Americans. 1 in 6, you said, yeah. So it would also end the Affordable Care Act's mandate that most Americans have health insurance. It would phase out the extra money that the federal government provides to states to incentivize expansion of Medicaid. So states simply wouldn't have the financial incentives to expand Medicaid that they've had over the last, what, seven years. And it would repeal almost all the tax increases imposed by the ACA that were there to pay for it, which means that they would provide broad tax cuts to higher income Americans. So it's pretty much more of the bad news that the AHCA set forth. So what's next? What comes next? Obviously, it will need to be voted on by the Senate. The Senate needs at least 50 votes, because the Vice President can be the tiebreaker. Presumably he will vote along party lines. And what's important about this is to remember that the Senate is trying to push this to get to the floor for a vote by next week. They want to do this before the July 4th recess. So from what reports are saying, not many people have seen this bill. I think Senator McCain said that Russia's probably seen it, but many Americans haven't yet. I thought that was kind of funny. Depressing and funny. So it's going to be a really jam-packed couple of days. A lot of people are mobilizing. As Jen said, in support of the bill or in opposition to the bill. It's important to make your voice, organization's voice, heard. It's 100 and how many pages?
148.
That's not too bad.
No.
Not too bad. So it's out there. There's tons and tons of summaries coming out. The big HIV advocacy organizations will also be releasing statements on the impact for people affected by HIV. So just be on the lookout for all of that and for all of these opportunities.
It's ironic, as of right now, there are 4 Republican senators. Oh, you have that?
I just saw it on my phone.
Okay.
So this is, there are 4 GOP senators that have come out together, right, in one statement saying that they in its current form, they would not support this. So that's it's two fewer than they.
And guess what's not the liberal ones, it's the most conservative ones in the Senate.
Rand Paul said it wasn't, yeah. So hey, it didn't go far enough to, yes. So that's, a lot can change. They're holding a lot of high profile secret meetings in the next couple of days to garner support for the bill. So we'll see what happens, but be on the lookout for statements on the bill and take a look. We'll keep you posted on that. One more bad. This is it. I'll just fly through this. But a couple of weeks ago, the president released his full budget proposal. So you may have heard what some of the funding cuts would look like. So the president proposes that for fiscal year 2018, HHS, Health and Human Services budget, should be cut by $69 billion, which amounts to about a 20% cut. For us, that means that HIV prevention programs would see $149 million cut, about 20%. STD prevention programs, about $22 million, for about 15%. Ryan White, parts A, B, C, and D would be level funded, but Part F programs, the SPINS program, and AETC cut entirely. And HACWA, Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS, would see a $26 million cut, which is about 7%. So these are scary numbers, absolutely. But I want to remind everyone that this budget isn't going anywhere, and it's not just this administration. Most, executive budgets at this stage are for optics. They are sort of following up on all of the campaign promises made. What's going to happen over the next couple of months is that the Senate and House committees on appropriations and budget will put together their own spending plans. And if they don't come to an agreement by September, then we face another government shutdown. We'll just keep doing this for the next couple of weeks, back and forth, and hopefully we'll come to some sort of agreement before then. But rest assured that even with these proposed cuts, the New York City Health Department has planned for for what the implications of that would be. Both our care and treatment program and our prevention program have planned for this. So we are prepared for the worst, expecting, what is it? We're expecting the best, prepared for the worst. Well, I don't know if we're expecting the best, but we are prepared for the worst at the very least. And City Hall is aware of all this, and they're working hard to figure out where we go from here. I wish I could hit on something. This is kind of, I don't know if you've heard the Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS. 6 members who are living with HIV very publicly resigned last week, in large part due to the funding cuts to the HIV federal programming and services fund. So I'm not sure that's, I mean, it's activism at its best. I think it's getting a lot of press, and I think it's important that we remind the administration that people with HIV have health and healthcare needs and rights, and we need to be reminding them of that. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about that.
I just want to know who were and were any of the ones that resigned, were they from New York City? New York State, period.
They were from New York. I can get you all this, Billy. It was in the press release. I don't call their names, so.
So if you have any questions on this or anything legislative policy related, my contact info is on the last slide, and feel free to email me anytime, and I'll try my best to.
Thank you, Adrian. I don't think you can talk much faster. So let's go through committee reports. The committees have all been very active. Some committees are meeting twice a month now to complete their work, and I just want to commend them for that. Sharon and Matt?
Sure, good afternoon, everybody. The PSRA met last week. We began discussion on strategies for the fiscal year 2018 application spending plan. Person may have a cap on how much we can ask for above this year's award. The PSRA is discussing whether to earmark any increase for a specific service category such as housing, or ask for a proportionate across the board increase. A draft application spending plan will be presented to the EC and the Council in July, hopefully. Also, the application spending plan is not binding. The PSRA will continue working through the fall and winter to develop scenarios for the actual fiscal year 2018 award. As part of the process, we heard two presentations last week on transitional care coordination, including information on quality indicators, provider feedback, and comparison with other case management programs. This conversation will continue over the next several months, and we have a lot of work to do, and I appreciate my committee. Thank you.
So this committee is about following the money. Follow the money. And I've been encouraging you who are not on that committee to come and sit in on this committee. You'll get a really good sense of how things are prioritized, why they're prioritized, what tools are used to address a shortfall in our funding, how we move money around in order to accommodate overspending, underspending, high performers, underperformers. I'm really a true believer in knowing your finances and the finances of this body. And that's the one committee where you get a really good sense of that. The other committee, which only meets three or four times a year, is the Finance Committee. And again, if you're a lover of Excel spreadsheets, you're probably on that committee. But this is the one meeting of the year where Public Health Solutions and the grant administrator comes to the council and reports on what happened with the entire award and its spending over the course of the last grant year. And it's always refreshing to hear the work that's been done by Public Health Solutions to avoid any underspending in the $85 or so million of program dollars. And it's a phenomenal effort because there's so many cities across the country that receive Round Part A dollars that report large underspending at the end of every year back to the government. And we're we're indeed an exception, and really a really good example of management of our contracts. And this is the one meeting of the year where you get to hear that reported, and discussed, and ask questions about the whole process that leads to that success. So Terry, Daniel's here.
Hi. General Ray spoke about the community briefing, the housing community briefing that we had a few months ago. And if you are interested in getting the transcripts, also please email Melanie or email me, and we can send you the transcripts for you to read them. It's about 140 pages or so. So we will be working on that in the next few months. The other work that we are doing is also looking at the transitional care coordination category, and we are going to have some presentation by the Department of Health on the category. And also we are going to be hearing from the service providers. So some of the service providers that had been awarded grants to perform to deliver that category next month. So if you're interested in learning more about transitional care coordination, please come to the meeting. The other piece is that, well, something we want to do at the next meeting is also think about our annual plan for the fall and for the spring. So if you have any ideas, for instance, for another community briefing, we have one last year and we had one this year for some housing. So we will be discussing what we want to do in the next year. So send us your feedback. Thank you.
Lisa?
Hi, good afternoon. The IS Integration of Care Committee met yesterday. We're going to meet twice a month to finish our work for the term. We are continuing line by line work on the care coordination program service directive. We're almost done. We have another meeting next week where we're going to work specifically on inserting language around person-centered care and trans-supportive language into the directive. So we have one more meeting next week, and then we'll meet again in July, and we will have a finished product for the executive committee and the full planning council by the last meeting in July. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and Chris is on vacation. Again, I want to acknowledge their work. They've been really focused very heavily on care coordination, which, as you know, is a quarter of our spending. Dozens of contracts, thousands of people that are served, and we want to get it right. And the first model is now 7 or 8 years old, and we've been working to improve it in many different ways. And Chris and Lisa have been really great at guiding us through the process.
Okay, I just wanted to also acknowledge, I think this is what you're saying. Our next meeting is Wednesday, June 28th, from 9:30 to 12:30. Yeah, and so it's wrong on the document in here. We're doing 3-hour meetings now. We're really intense at ISC. So instead of, if you'd like to join us, you're all welcome, but please come at 9:30 and we'll have lunch. And breakfast and a coffee. Thank you.
Billy?
Good evening. Yeah. The Consumer Committee met this past Tuesday, at which the New York State Department of Health and AIDS Institute presented the Living Cascade. The Living Cascade is a visual tool designed to prompt discussion on the steps to improve HIV engagement, care, and treatment outcomes, building on the consumer's qualitative input on their patient's experience. This tool can be used to identify barriers to health and improve health, and improve patients' providers, and will improve patients and providers' practice along each of the steps of the continuum. The committee is exploring additional activities to showcase consumer engagement and quality improvement, with a view toward developing a consumer-centric track at this fall power quality improvement conference. Planning Council and the Consumer Committee outreach continued which has never been used throughout the borough, targeted for outreach and recruitment efforts. The Consumer Committee brochure is ready for Spanish translation and printing, pending the additional language indicating handicap accessibility at all meeting venues. The next meeting will be on Tuesday, July 8th. All over.
Gerald, do you want to announce the vacancy, consumer at large?
Oh, yes, I distributed today to the Consumers Committee a announcement stating that we are looking for nominations for the consumer at large. This position has been held by Mr. Randall Bruce for the last couple of years, and he will be retiring from the council, so we need to identify a planning council appointed member who can take his place. So nominations are open from members of the Consumer Committee. Please email me with the nominations, and the election will take place next month in July. Thank you.
So any council member who is HIV positive is eligible to run for that position. I want to thank Faye Barrett. She's stepped up to take Daphne Hazel's place and run the Rules of Membership Committee. She's on the committee and she knows the process really well. And as you are aware, the Rules of Membership Committee is very time-specific endeavor. And we are about to engage in that. So David, do you want to speak briefly about it?
I just want to thank Faye for stepping up and chairing the committee. We're meeting next Tuesday. We got a lot of applications this year, about half of them from consumers. So we have a lot of people to review and interview, and we'll be making a recommendation, the committee will be making a recommendation for a slate of new appointments by next month.
Sorry, I missed Tri-County. Maria, are you going to report on that?
Yeah. Okay, as you know, Tri-County Steering Committee met last week to begin voting on the priority ranking. Scores on the Tri-County Service Portfolio for 2018. Using the priority setting tool developed by PSRA, this is a culmination of 6 months of presentations and discussions on every service category in the Tri-County portfolio. The steering committee completed voting on 5 out of the 9 categories, which I'm amazed. At our July meeting, we will complete voting on the remaining 4 categories. We will also develop a spending plan for the 2018 grant application, which will be presented at the EEC and council next month.
Thank you, Maria. And finally, Steve Hemmerich is not here. David, just want to speak briefly about the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee is meeting on Monday at 4 o'clock at DOH, Long Island City. Everybody's welcome, as Jan said, especially if you like spreadsheets. We'll be looking at the 2016 closeout reports. Actually, I sent it to everybody by email, so if you have a preview of it. This is part of our, the fulfillment of our obligation under the law to, as they say, assess the effectiveness of the administrative mechanism. In other words, seeing how well the grantee and Public Health Solutions master contractor implements the spending plan that we approve every year.
Are there any public comments this time?
Yeah. Paul Carter, this Wednesday on June 28th, the SIP Coalition is having a meeting up in Washington Heights at the Washington Heights Corner Project from 3 to 5 p.m. And it's at 566 West 181st Street, second floor. So we will be talking about the bill as well as other information, and these meetings are open to anyone who likes to attend. And if you have any more questions, you can contact me or Vocal.
I have a statement and a comment regarding the announcement for the Assistant Commissioner of the Bureau of HIV/AIDS, Dimitri's former position. I looked at the job description and about 80 to 90% of the responsibilities seems to me that are better suited for a public law practitioner as opposed to NMD. But my concern is that the requirement, it requires for the position that the person is an MD. So that I'm afraid that leaves out a lot of other, public law practitioners that can continue to work. I, of course, don't have any opposition to the person is an MD. Dimitri was an MD and did an exceptional job. But, wondering this is going to be some great applicants.
I haven't looked at the posting myself, but from the initial email I received, I understand there's two different versions. One requires the person to be an MD and one does not. They wanted to ensure that there was a diverse pool. I need to look at both those postings to just confirm that that's
right
in line with what.
That's exactly right. It was an intentional decision on the part of the health department to make sure that one position asked for an MD and the other for a PhD. So to get a more diverse pool of applicants. So exactly right.
So why not put both on the same announcement? Because why not put both on the same announcement? Because I think if people only see one, they're going to say, well, I cannot apply for that because.
Welcome to civil service day.
Yeah, both Graham and I know that, and I think we both served under people who had MDs or had PhDs or, I think those are the two graduate level degrees that people in that position have held that I'm aware of.
I'm always amazed the idea that a doctor would want to drive a desk. Yeah.
Okay, it's at 5 o'clock and we're finished. I do want to wish everybody at the table happy Gay Lesbian Pride Month. And what? People on the telephone?
Don't forget your charge phones. People who are charging, don't walk out without them.
Oh, people are charging their cell phones. Don't walk out of here without them. Puts us in a real sticky place. All right, thank you all very much for today. We'll see you in July. Thank you.